You're good? You're good? Okay. Okay. Well, good afternoon. Hey, good afternoon. Good afternoon. Welcome to the RTA Trans Innovation Series, session number 6. Today's session is called Circulator Innovations and the Last Mile. Up to this point, we've been talking about bus rapid transit, land use, trade-offs, express lanes, things of that nature. And today we are going to do our very best to push the innovative side of the RTA Transit Innovation Series. I'm Joe Milazzo. I'm the Executive Director of the Regional Transportation Alliance. It's my pleasure to welcome you once again to the series. I want to briefly thank our partner sponsors. Without them, this series would not exist. We want to thank Duke Energy, Lenovo, Kimley Horn & Associates, Triangle Transit, and URS. If you could give them a quick round of applause for their support. Our leadership team, without them, the RTA would not exist, and you see them as our 4 founding member chambers from Cary, Chapel Hill, Carrboro, Durham, and Raleigh. Our platinum member, Duke Energy, gold members, Cisco, the Edge Program, Fairway Outdoor Advertising, Forge Communications, the Greater Raleigh Chamber, GlaxoSmithKline, Quintiles, the Research Triangle Park. Our silver members, as you see here, Blue Cross and Blue Shield of North Carolina, Cherokee Investment Partners, Credit Suisse, Fidelity Investments, First Citizens Bank, IBM Corporation, Kane Realty, Kimley Horn & Associates, Lenovo, Moore Corporation, NetApp, Red Hat. Our regional partners here, the Capital Area, Durham Chapel Carrboro MPOs, Capital Area Transit here with the City of Raleigh, the Raleigh-Durham Airport Authority, and Triangle Transit. If we could applaud all of them for their support. Thank you. You see our other member chambers, 23 chambers of commerce in 10 counties in central eastern North Carolina, working in collaboration with 100 business members to form the RTA. We have with us 2 speakers. We have with us via remote a total of 3 speakers today to talk about 2 great topics. It's my pleasure to introduce these 2 speakers in just a moment, but before I do, I want you to see the lower right corner there. As always, you can follow this conversation. You can follow the RTA in general on Twitter. You can see the address at RTA Triangle. The conversation hashtag for this is pound or hashtag RTA Transit Series. This afternoon we have presentations on automated personal rapid transit and also urban gondola lifts. Both of these concepts are things that are certainly innovative, but they are also things that have already been in place. And we're going to hear about that from our speakers. In person, we have 2 folks from North Carolina State, Mr. Marshall Brain of the Engineering Entrepreneurs Program, Mr. Seth Holler from the Department of Mechanical and Aerospace Engineering, both at NC State. Please give them a warm RTA Trans Innovation Series. Page up, page down, arrow up, arrow down, we work with it.
Thank you.
Yep.
And thank you for the nice introduction and for having us. Both Joe and Natalie have done a lot of work behind the scenes to make it possible for us to speak today. Joe has also provided a tremendous amount of feedback over several months to help us refine our ideas. And thank you as an audience for coming today. The fact that we get to speak to you is an honor. So to get started, our goal today is to talk about transportation in the Raleigh-Durham RTP area and to present a new way to think about transportation. So our agenda is to talk about some of the problems that occur with transportation in the area, understand all of the options, and part of this is just an educational process to expose everything that's possible for the area, to talk about the importance of Guideway. We're going to keep coming back to Guideway and its central place in designing transportation systems. Then we're going to talk to you about the Eco PRT concept, which Seth and I have worked together to design and engineer to try to address and optimize transportation problems in the Triangle and come up with a new solution that is innovative and interesting, and then to ask for your input. So we're going to present an idea to you. We have socialized it quite a bit. We've talked to Wake County, we've talked to Campo, we've talked to North Hills Mall, we've talked to RTP, the organization, and a number of other people to try to get feedback to refine the idea, and we would love to bring you into that pool today to give us feedback, to tell us where you think it's smart and where it's not smart. So we hold these truths to be self-evident, and that's a starting point, like it gives you our background. American car culture, in our opinion, is holding us back as a society. We're wedded to that, especially in the Triangle. The 21st century, we need a better system. There are existing options for rapid transit, but we don't think they're necessarily the full answer, and we'd like to present a new one. And we're going to come back to this concept of guideways. So, I want you to imagine that it's the morning, you're getting ready for work, you're doing your dishes, you look out your window at the kitchen sink into your backyard, a spaceship lands, deposits an alien being, and takes off. And the alien being introduces himself. He says he wants to spend a day on planet Earth to see how society works here in America, and he's chosen you to be his guide. And so you say, great, I go to work every weekday, and that's where I'm going today, so let me take you there. You drive out of your neighborhood, you get on I-40, and chances are you're going to hit the first problem with transit in the Triangle. You're going to hit traffic. I-40, in my experience, can come to a complete standstill sometimes. So your alien friend is going to experience this interesting fact about our transportation system, that the infrastructure is really expensive and we never have enough during rush hour. The second thing our alien visitor is going to notice is that we have this obsession with parking. So in your house you have a garage to park your vehicle, then you go to work and there's a whole parking lot to park your vehicle. You go shopping, this is Crossroads Mall, you can see this is Dick's, this is Best Buy, this is Toys R Us, and you can see the parking is bigger than the actual retail space. And then you go to work, you have your parking there as well, this triplication of parking all over our society. It takes a lot of money and space to support that. And then the fact that we're all bearing gigantic costs with this culture that we have in place. So we have to pay for the vehicle, the insurance, the maintenance. Then there's the congestion and the time it wastes, the parking, the amazing cost of parking. Whether it's embedded in the cost of our house, in our workplace, in our shopping, or we actually pay for it out on the street. And then this amazing fact, that 90 or 95% of the time our cars are sitting idle in these parking spaces. We don't use them very much. And our alien visitor, after a day of watching us use this transit system, might come to the conclusion that out of all the possibilities, we've designed the worst possible transportation system possible. Like it's just odd that it is working this way. So we do have alternatives, and we're all aware of them: subways and light rail and buses. The cost of these systems is gigantic, though, and they all have to be subsidized because of it. $100 million per mile for subways, $50 million for light rail, $20 million for interstates, and that leads to a convenience problem. So you can go to a subway station and wait 20 minutes for a train. The stations are spaced out. You have to wait en route to stop at all the stations. And The guideway for all of these things can be extremely expensive. Dedicated highways are expensive. We have high congestion on the highways we use. Subway tracks are really expensive. So the future of transit is about coming to grips with guideway and bringing those costs down. Seth, I'll let you talk about PRT.
Okay.
And go ahead and get started with that.
So the concept of PRT, Personal Rapid Transit, has been around a while. It's a type of system that's automated where you have no wait times, you have small vehicles to move you around at a personal level so that you can go from point A to B without actually stopping. So no stops en route. These vehicles are reused multiple times, so there's virtually, compared to car ownership, little or no parking that you need for them. So overall, it could potentially be a better system that you could use to solve some of these problems. Before I talk in depth about PRT, what I want to do is, I talked to Joe, I said, well, in addition to PRT, let's just touch upon autonomous cars and that technology and where that's trending to. But to understand where it's trending to probably requires that we look back a decade to see what has happened. One of the biggest events in the 2000s was the DARPA Grand Challenge starting in 2004, where the research arm of the DoD, DARPA, was basically charged with, well, let's find a way to automate 1/3 of our military forces in the US, and we'll start by having these challenges of vehicle automation. And so what they did is have $1 million to $2 million rewards for the car that can navigate through some sort of path. And the first was in the desert, the next was in an urban setting. Here's an example. Oh. Here's an example. We'll get there. I will definitely get there.
Definitely. There you go.
I will run that back real quick. Here's an example of Stanford's research on the DARPA Urban Challenge, where this driverless vehicle was having to navigate a left-hand turn with the vehicles in its way. That research was under Dr. Sebastian Bring of Stanford. And later, as you will know, I'll touch upon, work turned into the Google driverless car. But even before that, in 2004, there was autonomous bus work by Toyota. The IHE World Expo, Toyota had these buses that had some sort of hybrid solution. You could drive them manually. Alternatively, they could convoy with other buses in front of them. Let's see if this works. Got it. And so here you have a bus that is driving using controls to stay on the roadway. Unlike the Urban Challenge, they didn't necessarily have to worry about additional items in the way, and you can see how it's a driverless vehicle carrying real passengers at the expo. So, like I said before, Stanford's research got folded into the Google driverless car that we have all heard about. It's been going on for a number of years, but it's worth pointing out some of the milestones. Last year, they had 500,000 miles of driverless driving. The technology cost in 2012, though they're dropping, was about $150,000. Half of that was the LiDAR system for three-dimensional viewing. Though that was new technology, I expect those prices to drop as well. To give you an idea of a driverless car, they have the Priuses. They can stop when pedestrians are in the way. They can navigate through intersections with additional cars. They can avoid cars on the right and make right-hand turns. The thing about driverless cars is when you look at the videos, it's actually pretty boring because they're doing what normal cars would do with real drivers. So let's talk about the future. Where is autonomous car going? How is this related to transit? IEEE, the leading electrical engineering society, they're thinking all vehicles could be autonomous by 2040. Well, another group is saying, well, truly self-driving cars could be available as early as 2020. Maybe not all of them, but perhaps some of them. What's the fallout of that? Well, PricewaterhouseCoopers is saying, perhaps the car sharing or taxi services are US vehicle fleet alone could shrink significantly. So let's take these ideas and translate it to the existing systems that we understand. And understand that these numbers are only examples. They don't refer to any specific system in general, and you can certainly argue about the prices. But let's say we have these costs associated for per passenger mile transit costs. You have a bus, light rail, taxi, and they both have capital costs and operating costs. And what we want to do is say, in its simplest form, we have a technology where we buy and purchase and install it in each of these systems. So how could that affect costs? Well, as far as I know, generally 3/4 of operating costs from buses are derived from driver costs. Taxi, obviously, that's a little more. Again, you can argue about the numbers, but the main point is understanding the theory behind this and how this could potentially drive customer demand. Maybe because bus is the cheapest if you describe, if you have that autonomous technology. But then again, taxi is relatively cheap as well and has that convenience factor. So maybe everyone will opt to take personalized taxis. That's not going to solve the congestion problem. In fact, that could potentially make it worse because now you have everyone driving separate vehicles, and so you have single occupancy vehicles, but then you have zero occupancy vehicles as well driving on the roads. Again, this translates back to managing the guideway. If you simply have an unmanaged guideway where it's a free-for-all, that will not solve the congestion problem. Existing PRT systems, and when I say PRT systems, what I'm saying is these are autonomous vehicles, but they're autonomous vehicles in a confined setting in a dedicated guideway. They don't have to worry about pedestrians, they don't have to worry about manually driven cars. They have a unified control system. There are examples out there now. Perhaps the most popular example is the Ultra PRT system in Heathrow. Opened up in 2011, has 2.4 miles of guideway. Typical system costs about $15 to $20 million a mile. Vehicle holds about 4 to 6 people. This is an example. One of my students during spring break went and rode the system overseas, and you can see it in operation as he enters the vehicle. This was driven mainly to connect a parking lot, a distant parking lot, to one of the terminals. And you can see it's coming from an offline station, merging onto the main guideway, and driving through. Just a few images, satellite images showing where the route is and the spaciousness of the vehicle. And this is just an in-depth look at one of the parking lot stations, actually 2 of them on either side. Perhaps the longest running PRT system is in Morgantown, West Virginia. West Virginia University was a recipient of federal grants in the 1970s to receive a PRT system. There were extended cost overruns and a lot of political media attention, if you will, that probably turned off the American public from PRT because of it. But one of the main goals here was to produce a system where the per passenger operations cost was very low. And in the end, they did get that. It was an experimental system, but it's been running reliably for 2 or 3 decades now. Per passenger trip cost, less than $1. This is a picture of the depot. This is a video showing the station, the vehicle in action. Vehicles here hold about 20 people. The difference between this and, say, a true PRT system is this system holds 20 people, so you're never going to get A to B routing or point A to point B routing without stopping. It's more like an elevator where you get in, a bunch of people press different floor numbers, and then it just goes to each of those floors, but actually skips some of the floors that people aren't going to. During rush hour, it probably goes to every single station, 5 stations in all, 7 miles. But when it's not as busy, it goes to select stations. So other systems do exist. To get there is a Master Middle East, relatively small system in place. Vectis just opened in 2013. That's more of a rail-type solution. It's used for tourism. Modutran in Mexico has a test track. They're looking at the first opportunity for commercial systems. SkyWeb Express has been around in prototype version for a long time, but hasn't actually gotten the traction to have a real system out there. So there are systems out there, but they haven't quite reached that level of true, what I would say, mass transit. They're relatively small scale at this point in time. So I'm going to pass it over to Marshall, and he'll talk to you about Eco PRT to address some of the things that I put out here.
So, Eco PRT is the system that Seth and I have been working on for the last year or so, doing the design and engineering thinking to create a new kind of transportation system. This is the first time it's ever been presented in a public setting. So as I mentioned, we've talked to a lot of people about it, but we've never talked in a public place about it. So this is kind of exciting to us, and we would love your feedback, either by email or whatever other system you would like to use. We have 3 concept photos at the beginning. This shows one possible design for Eco PRT Guideway running down Hillsborough Street near D.H. Hill Library at NC State. You can see a truss-style track with vehicles running on that track, and it is elevated to get it out of the way of everything else. Sorry. This is that same idea with the system running on campus. This is near the Nuclear Engineering Building. And then this shows a size comparison of an Eco PRT vehicle compared to a standard SUV. The vehicles are very thin. They're sized to hold 2 people because the average occupancy of a vehicle in the United States is 1.2 people. So especially in a place like NC State where students are traveling alone or in pairs, this is a perfect vehicle size. The narrowness of it lets us make very narrow guideway, which lets it fit in lots of different places. But it is possible to conceive of longer vehicles that hold more passengers. So let's look at the key differentiators that make Eco PRT a unique transportation system. The first thing about it is the guideway. The guideway is extremely lightweight, it's low cost with a target price of just $1 million per mile. So if you think back, $100 million a mile for subway, $50 million a mile for light rail, $1 million per mile is unprecedented. And we have spoken with Kimley Horn and had them do some analysis on this, and this is not a pie-in-the-sky number. You can use standard components, mass-produced track, standard pole systems with efficient planting of the poles in the infrastructure and reach that kind of target price. This shows you a headway comparison. So one question that comes up a lot is capacity. Using these little vehicles on this guideway, can you have capacity? So our proposed headway between vehicles is 2 seconds. Small vehicles with that kind of headway, you can move 3,600 people per hour maximum through this system. A light rail or subway system is going to use much larger vehicles, but also much larger headways. You've probably never seen a train system with 2-minute headways. Usually it's more like 10 minutes. And then they have to use huge trains that hold 1,000 passengers to keep the capacity up, which means a lot of empty seats at low times. So it's easy for us to have high capacity with this system. The other thing is the way that the size of the vehicles affects the guideway. If you are using 100,000-pound vehicles, those are point loads that have a great deal of infrastructure that have to support them. You have to support 100,000 pounds, and most of the track is idle most of the time. In this system, the track has many more vehicles on it, but they're tremendously lighter. So your whole infrastructure can be much lighter and therefore much less expensive. Second key thing about Eco PRT is lightweight, inexpensive 1- or 2-person vehicles. So our target price for a vehicle is $10,000. And if you think about small cars like a Toyota Yaris, they're in that kind of price range. And therefore, with mass production, the price range of $10,000 for these small vehicles is easy to think about and an easy target to hit. Third thing is to make the guideway thin and small in terms of its footprint. And that allows you to use existing rights-of-way. So you could imagine an Eco PRT track running in the right-of-way along the side of a road like this. You can imagine it running alongside greenways. You can imagine it running in power line easements. There's a lot of places you can put it, and also in an urban setting you can weave it between buildings and things like that, so it fits anywhere. And that makes it extremely versatile. It's also possible to pick it up and move it if you need to. You can't really move a road like that. But Eco PRT Guideway, because it's so inexpensive and easy to install, you can just pick it up and reinstall it somewhere else if you needed to. This shows you a comparison of vehicle sizes. This is to scale. An Eco PRT vehicle is something like 36 inches wide. A car is twice as wide as that. Light rail is 3 times wider. And this has a huge footprint when you put it into an urban area. It needs a lot of room on either side of it. It is a heavy vehicle that can run over cars if it needs to. It's a completely different sort of mindset when you're using small vehicles like this. Next thing is convenience. It inherits, Eco PRT inherits its convenience from the PRT architecture. Personal rapid transit systems are point-to-point with no stops. Eco PRT takes advantage of that. There are always vehicles ready and waiting for you when you get to the station. There's no wait times. It can run 24/7 because it's an automated system. There's nothing that prevents you from just walking up to a station at 3 o'clock in the morning and instantly boarding a waiting vehicle for you. The next feature, since Seth and I both teach in the Engineering Entrepreneurs Program, is to make this system entrepreneurial. That is, to make it possible to be privately funded. Almost every system in the world today that does public transportation is a subsidized system because the infrastructure is so expensive. We're trying to break that paradigm. So our fare, which would be roughly the same as the cost per mile of driving a car, can cover the entire cost of the vehicles, the guideway, the stations, the maintenance, the power that's needed, and do that without any subsidies. So we want to be able to create a system that can deploy out there with private funding and then recoup the cost of deploying it. And this reimburses the cost of infrastructure over time. So if you as a private company wanted to install Guideway, the fare structure gives you a way to get reimbursed for that Guideway or for a station. We hope to incubate this at a place like NC State. And we're having a lot of conversations at NC State about doing this because there's already a rapid transit corridor in the master architecture for NC State. Because there's already significant traffic on the NC State bus system, about 15,000 rides per day and 30,000 students total. It's easier to get right-of-way at NC State because it's privately owned, and the audience is very receptive. To have a forward-thinking, really progressive system like this would be a big advertising point for a university like NC State. So we would hope to use NC State as a seed in the area. We plant the seed, and then we let market forces drive expansion from NC State. So let me give you an example of that. In this map, this is main NC State campus between Hillsborough Street and Western Boulevard. This is Centennial Campus. This is downtown Raleigh. This is Cameron Village Shopping Center, just to get you oriented. So imagine that we build a seed system at NC State, running approximately from the new Hunt Library to the D.H. Hill Library. Okay, that system is going to have tremendous traffic. And so Cameron Village might look at that and say, wow, we would love to have access to 30,000 students who could just skip over to our shopping center and do some shopping very easily. So they could fund a spur that would bring students straight off the campus to their facility. They pay for it themselves, but they get reimbursed for that through the fare structure. Now, Glenwood South area merchants might say, well, that's working very well. We would like to take advantage of that too. So they fund another spur. And that brings traffic from Cameron Village type folks and campus to the restaurants and bars and shops over here on Glenwood South. Downtown Raleigh looks at that and says, wow, we'd like a piece of that action. There's a lot of traffic on this little system now, so they fund another spur. And again, the fare structure gives these people a way to get reimbursed for this infrastructure, the track and the stations that they install under this system. So they aren't having to put all this stuff in the ground and see that as a pure cost. They get to recover that money over time. So that entrepreneurial aspect of it is one of the things about Eco PRT that's especially unique. Seth?
In the last year, we've had a lot of collaboration with students and professors, and I would call it multidisciplinary. I've been heading a team of mechanical engineering students tasked with building a prototype vehicle. Professor Greg Dunko's senior design class, he has a team that's working on the control systems for the vehicle, and been working with Dr. John Stone, civil engineering, where they're actually evaluating Eco PRT along a route on campus. To expand on that, Dr. John Stone's class is divided into two firms, where at the beginning of the semester they were tasked to evaluate various technologies and choose one to work on for the rest of the semester. They could have chosen from gondola, monorail, light rail, advanced bus, PRT, general PRT, or Eco PRT specifically, and one of those, half of the class actually chose Eco PRT to work with. So this is the example route that they were looking at, identifying potential problem areas, estimating guideway costs, putting down concept stations. An example of where they have specific areas they're looking at were over the high power transmission lines in Centennial campus and also over the railroad. This is an example station one of the students put together at the Hunt Library. Another student of mine, Travis Fritz, he put together a simulation to show how it could work at NC State. You slide your car, you punch where you want to go, you walk to the vehicle location, the vehicle comes, picks you up, and then off you go to your destination without stopping. Other example designs from the civil engineering class include this station. I believe the location was at Western and Avett, and the goal here